Brenda, I really appreciate you sharing that, and we wish you and your husband the best. And as Dr. Earl will explain today, our products are real. The science behind our products are very unique and the only one out there. And so we really appreciate you sharing those things. And Trisha and all those who helped Brenda, we appreciate your leadership, your example for helping change people's lives. So with that being said, I have the privilege today to introduce our one and only Brett Earl. He's probably one of my favorite guys in all of ACTIVZ. He's on our scientific medical board. He is a, what is the word I'm looking for?
Crazy?
No, a board certified physician. Basically, he's a doctor for the past 18 years, a real doctor, not just, we call him Dr. Earl for nothing, but he is a board certified physician, which he received his medical degree from the University of Nevada, Reno. Dr. Earl is married with 6 kids, and he actually played baseball in college, and he's a very, very sports-minded guy, but more so such a knowledgeable guy. He started his, he left medicine, practicing medicine, and then he opened up his own clinic out there in Bountiful, Utah, which I have the privilege of taking some of the Japanese distributors there to visit him and his staff, which it was awesome. They made the Japanese feel so comfortable and loved. But he is trying to change the weekend warrior, the sports fanatics people, and that's how he actually met David, doing the PRP and the ozone treatments, which I also got to take a part of as well. But he has been practicing integrative medicine for quite some time now out there at the Denali Medical Clinic. And he is very keen on what makes people not only recover, but preventative injury. And I'm going to just, on a side note, I'm going to deviate just a little bit. I got to travel with Dr. Earl to Japan numerous times. And he is probably one of the best travel companions I ever had. And the Japanese people love him. I just going to say that usually when doctors present or scientists present, everybody falls asleep. But when Dr. Earl presents, everybody is energetic, laughing, taking notes, and he changes the atmosphere of the room. Just the presence alone is none other than the knowledge that he has in regards to our products and the way things that can change people's lives and body and the health of people. So with that being said, Dr. Earl, I will turn the time over to you.
Wow. I think we're done. I can't even compete or measure up to that introduction. I thank you, and my life is over. I've reached the pinnacle apparently. So great.
And the best thing about that, Dr. Earl, all of that is true. Usually when people introduce, they kind of add some fluff. Everybody, this is 100% true.
You're very kind. Thank you. Well, it's interesting. David and I talked a little bit earlier today, and I've been giving some thought about what to talk about. And there's a few topics that we'll discuss at first that seem to come up fairly readily. The first, and I'll start with this, and it's interesting, Brenda, that was such a perfect introduction to what we're going to be talking about today. Because the reality is the trifecta affects the body on such a foundational level that it can't help but influence everything that is either diseased or needs help. And then if the body is running at optimal efficiency, which if somebody has their body's running at optimal efficiency, I say congratulations and just wait another couple of weeks. I'm kidding. I'm not a pessimist, but the reality is, we all need a little bit of help. We all need help maximizing our health and really taking it to that next level, if you will. And it doesn't matter what stage of wellness you're in. the trifecta will have a beneficial effect for you and your health. Everything from cognition, that means your mental awareness, all the way down to your digestive system, and just, again, the list goes on, and neurological, and skin, and it's just absolutely amazing. And so hearing stories like Brenda shared today, it's a reality because these molecules are so foundational. I remember one of the classes that they indoctrinated us with, pharmacology. They consistently talked about the fact that one molecule for one treatment and one disease, and this was obviously spearheaded by the pharmaceutical companies. But they didn't take into account the fact that some of these really basic foundational molecules can influence across the entire body. And we know that's the case. I mean, the most foundational molecules are oxygen, water, and some of these basic, molecules that really help us extract out the energy that we need from the food we eat and so forth. And so the reality is, we already know that there's amazing things out there in the universe and in nature that help us to extract out what we need to maximize our lives. And the trifecta is no different. All we've done is we've taken really core, basic, pure science, and we figured out what the body really needs, and put it into capsule form and a readily accessible form that can be transported and be taken by anyone. And so it's absolutely amazing what we have right in front of us. And it's interesting, as I work with some people in different teams, and I talk to them about what really makes ACTIVZ different. Certainly it's the people. And certainly it's the process where ACTIVZ is really trying to make sure that the small people are really taken care of. As you start, the ability to get going is just incredible. And they don't change their program, their payout structure at a whim like I've seen with the past. I mean, it's the real deal. But I really get excited about the products. I really do, and that obviously is some of my focus because of the medical degree and everything else that has brought me here to this point. So a few things that I just want to touch on briefly, and then we'll kind of get into a few different things. We'll answer some questions and see where it goes from there. The first topic that David said that has been coming up quite a bit is the detoxification process. And that comes in twofold, meaning that sometimes you'll have patients that start the trifecta and they won't feel all that great. Really, what that means is they've got some cleanup to do before the body can start to really take advantage of the goodness and the good feeling that happens. So, and patients will ask, and people will ask, does the trifecta, does it detox our bodies? And to say that it directly does is some of that research is out there, but it's not really solidified. What they see is increase in bodily function. They see the toxins leave, but actually saying that the trifecta causes that, the research isn't there yet. And I want to emphasize that it's just not there yet. But let you consider three different components for detoxification. They're absolutely critical. So the first is obviously with Optimend and the turmeric. We know that that's a huge anti-inflammatory. And pieces of that anti-inflammatory nature come from its ability to help the body maximize what it's doing. And it can't maximize what it's doing if it's laden down with toxins. And so absolutely, if you give the body something amazing, it's going to get rid of things that are slowing it down. Butyric acid is also critical, and when we start thinking about how it detoxifies the body, again, it even reaches another level, which is, first, a lot of the butyric acid that is made by our bodies, right, is actually made by the body using, the microbiome in our digestive system using waste. So already we've taken some of that waste and turned it into a product that's beneficial to us. And a little butyric acid stimulates more and more because the body will start to call for it. So what you're taking in your supplement is augmented by the body's desire to have more butyric acid. And so it will stimulate those bacteria and work with them to increase the amount of butyric acid that's made. So again, first point as far as detoxification is we already decreased the toxic load that our body is going to see. Second, is that it is a pure fuel. So butyric acid is the preferred food source for endothelial cells. It really is a high food source for everything from your nerves, and just, again, the list goes on and on. We think endothelial cells, that's your digestive system, that's your lungs, that's your entire cardiovascular system. As far as the arteries and veins, they're lined with endothelial cells. That's your lungs, and obviously then your skin. So those are huge pieces of the body, huge systems in the body that prefer butyric acid as their source. And I remember, back in the day, I had a little motorcycle, and if I filled it with really cruddy fuel, it just didn't seem to run the same. And you got the smoke that came out because it just wasn't running quite the way it should. But once I brought it into tune, and I tuned it up, and I made it so that the air to fuel ratio and everything was just so, wow, you could get that machine to hum. Do you think our bodies are any different? And so if we give our bodies the fuel that it wants, that fuel that it's desiring, and that, again, for many of those components is butyric acid, what is it going to do with the waste and the toxins and the smoke and the sludge, if you will, that's been building up inside of the cell? It's going to have the resources, and it's going to have the ability to kick that out. And that absolutely happens. So is it direct? No. Is it indirect? Absolutely. And so you'll see patients that when they first start, if they're very toxic laden and they really have a bad toxic load, it may take them a few weeks of taking the product to really start to feel amazing. Now, many people, they just kind of work into taking the products and start feeling good over time and notice a big difference when they stop taking it. But if you have someone who starts taking the product and they feel miserable, tell them a couple of things. One, make sure they're taking just the very basic dose to get things started. And two, let them know that likely they have a pretty high toxic load, and they need to let this run its course so that they can get down the wellness course. Okay, and then and we talked about the fact that pure fuel. So the 3 points that I wanted to make, especially with butyric acid and detoxification, is that it is the bacteria already uses waste to make it. So you've got less toxins into your system from the get-go. It's a pure fuel. And most of the cells, which we've talked about, most of the cells that are involved with the detoxification process prefer butyric acid. So you'll see patients that are right there on the edge of getting well and need detoxification that have an initial detox reaction. So don't be surprised by that. Encourage them to get past those initial symptoms, because down the road, they'll notice huge benefits. So absolutely amazing from that standpoint. There has been obviously some discussion about COVID, and everyone's excited about COVID-19. And I don't want to get into a lot of the political nature and those type of things, but I do want to say just a few things. Most of the residual issues that happen with COVID-19, meaning people who have long-standing problems, or those patients that get hospitalized, it is because of overproduction of inflammatory cells, something called a cytokine storm. And then in the long run, if you have long-term COVID complications, it comes from twofold. One, persistent inflammation that is ongoing, and two, the COVID-19 virus actually attacks primarily, not exclusively, but primarily endothelial cells. So let's think for a minute. If we have endothelial cells that are getting compromised by COVID-19, And we then give those cells, we get rid of the inflammation using genomics and using OptiMend. And then we provide those cells with the preferred food source. What are they going to do? They're going to repair. They're going to be better. And again, a lot of the issues we're seeing with blood clotting is because those endothelial cells they die off and they leave this raw portion of the artery or vein that is exposed. That then leads to clotting. And so one of the things I had a gentleman in Las Vegas, 86 years old. He calls me up. He's hypoxic. He's sick. He can't get out of bed. I mean, all of the things that just tell you this isn't going to go well for him with his COVID fight. And I took down some oxygen. I did a bunch of things, but one of the key pieces, I should say, 3 of the key pieces that I put him on was the trifecta. He was better within a few weeks at 87 years old. He was obese, he's diabetic. I mean, he had the risk factors. And that's the science behind that, is the fact that butyric acid is the preferred food source for the preferred, or I should say this, the target of COVID-19. And so you're going to help them get better faster. You're going to help them resist the virus better, all of those things with the trifecta. And that is core science. That is just core science. So now with that said, there's a lot of information out there, and I want to try to empower you just a little bit in how to understand what is good and true science, and what you can really pay attention to. So obviously, the first thing, excuse me, that you need to do is really look at what the source of the science is. So, for example, a lot of the research that's coming out right now is actually paid for by pharmaceutical companies. We know that. And so because of that, what we're finding is that there's a really big emphasis on proving that drug X does what we say it's going to do. And so I would say, when you start looking at, critical thinking and start analyzing, what am I going to do to look at this in a critical way so that I can make a good decision? Some of those things that you need to consider are, who's paying for it, who's benefiting from this research. Because if you find that it has a particular purpose, meaning that research is designed to prove something or disprove something that benefits the financial backer, believing some of that science is difficult. I will say that right up front. So what is the process that I really look at when I start thinking critically? Excuse me. And one of those things certainly is looking at the source. And I have this step process that I originally started with to look at critically thinking about different research. And it's something like this. So the first thing that I learned is that it takes a level of commitment. So once you start trying to think critically and look at research and say, is this valid or is it not? You have to really commit to say, you can't just do a cursory look at it. You can't just do okay, I looked at 3 articles and et cetera. Now, I get away with that now because I know what to search for and what to look for, and I can typically find things fairly quickly. But it's because I went through this process first. So I'm committed, and I make sure that I really want to find this out. Then I go out and I try to get as many sources of information as I can. So that's the second step, is source info or acquisition of information. The third thing, so step 3, is I either discuss or debate what I found with mentors, with experts, and frankly, with people sometimes that aren't experts. But it's amazing who you'll find that knows some weird data point out there that totally changes the way that you think. And it's the guy at the garage fixing your car, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I read such and such." And you're like, "Oh, really? That's amazing." So commitment, get information, have discussions or debate. Then you need to analyze what you've put together. And at this stage, you're about midway through. I needed to say, okay, so I've got all of this information. I need to do a little bit of an analysis. Then the next step, which is the fifth step, is to reflect and be creative. So, and I would say this is one of the key pieces that a lot of people miss, is trying to creatively put this into perspective. Try to think about how it really works. Let me give you a perfect example. So when a new research article comes out, what I tend to do is go through these steps. And again, I'm doing it fairly quickly now and automatically. But when it comes time to analyze the science, I start reflecting, and I may not get as creative because science is all about data points, but I start reflecting on what I learned about core basic physiology. Does that make sense? So core basic physiology, and I compare the research article to that core basic physiology. And one of two things needs to happen. Either it needs to agree with core, I should say three things. It needs to agree with core physiology. It needs to reject core physiology and prove that the physiology is wrong, or it needs to just be thrown out because it doesn't fit and it doesn't work. So, and you'll find that really happens. And so you need to start comparing it to what you know. Next is I will start to put that into a basic structure. If I'm going to accept knowledge, I want to put it into a structure and say, okay, that fits here on this point in research, in life, in discussions, whatever you want to talk about. And then last, the last point is act or decide. Research and data does you nothing. It does no good unless you decide to do something with it. Action, well, wisdom is knowledge applied or wisely applied, accurately applied. So you've got to do something with the knowledge. And sometimes it's just making notes and cataloging it for later. I have a research file that is on the Google Drive, and it's single lines, and it's almost 300 pages long of different research. Now, that's because I'm a little obsessed with it. So I'm not saying you need to do that, but do something with your research so that you can find it and access it later. Often the people that find the most answers aren't those that have the most knowledge tucked away in their brain. They just know where to find it because they put it there. So those are the 7 steps to really critical thinking and going through things. Commit to go all in, acquire information, debate and discuss, do an analysis, get some basics down so you know how to discuss it better. Reflect and be creative. And so again, some of the other things you'll be more creative than just data points. And then put it to a structure, really get it where it fits, and then act on what you've decided to research and study. So critical thinking. And again, you're thinking 7 steps, that's so many, but really it goes very quickly once you get through those 7 steps. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to give you a very specific example. So Dr. McCord, we all know Dr. McCord, really pioneering the NRF2 research and so forth. Big part of genomics. We actually licensed genomics from his company. Well, recently they came out with some additional research that was geared towards a very specific piece of their company, but it was all done with NRF2. And it reiterated research that they had done before. And so simply by looking at what research they had now, understanding the purpose of why they did the research, and then going through these critical steps, it's easy to say, okay, this research actually correlates to genomics perfectly. And that means that we can use that research in our discussions. And I know this seems complicated, and most of you are thinking, I'm not a researcher, and I'm not this, and I'm that. It's okay. It's okay. These are just steps to go through if you want to broaden your knowledge and really piece together how to think about, assessing knowledge, information, data, and so forth. So hopefully that helps. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry for wasting your time, but hopefully it helps. We're at about 28 after, according to my clock. I do have a discussion on trust, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So where are we at from that standpoint?
I think we're good for now, Dr. Earl. Another 10-15 minutes. Everyone's loving your presentation. And I actually have a question for you that we got from our distributors that I'll lead the discussion. I know you briefly talked about COVID-19, and you actually created a wonderful video for one of our Zoom seminars for our Japanese distributors about a month or two ago. And yesterday, Hawaii recently went back in reverse and put some heavy restrictions on what we can or cannot do as far as gathering goes and everything like that. Now, when we started this about a year and a half ago with COVID-19, it was just a virus and it mutated to the UK. And now we're facing the Delta virus. So in regards to that, and you briefly talked about how the trifecta can help with the inflammation and things like that, does our product still help with all these mutations and the variants that we see?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And what my answer to that, Stu, and again, great question. My answer to that is we are focused on the wrong science. We are focused on the wrong data. When I say we, I'm talking countries and medical experts and nations. We're focused on the wrong science, because the reality is there is a mechanism, an amazing creation, a whatever we want to call our bodies, that have been fighting off all of these variations, variants, and changes and discoveries and what have you for millennia. And instead of focusing on, vaccinate this, and I'm not saying one way as far as vaccination versus the other, but instead of focusing on that, why are we not maximizing our body's ability to fight whatever comes at it? Because the reality is, everything from the rest of the other 7 coronaviruses are still out there. So is RSV and influenza, and again, the list goes on and on and on. And so if we get caught up focusing on, getting rid of specific entities, and Delta and Lambda's coming out next, by the way, and COVID, et cetera, and we would just say, let me make my body the most amazing, and just give it the tools that it needs to fight whatever comes its way, we would have very, very different outcomes. We know already, diabetics, obesity, high blood pressure, cardiac disease, pulmonary issues, those patients already have increased susceptibility. So that being said, the short answer, now that I've gone on way too long, is yes, because it affects the body at a core level. It gives it the energy it needs, fights the inflammation that is really driving a lot of the disease process that happens when we get any of either the COVID or any of its variants. So yes, absolutely amazing at helping get rid of whatever your body gets thrown at it.
Thank you. That was great. That was great. So if you don't mind then, Dr. Earl, we have about 10 more minutes left. We'll open up the floor for anyone who has a question in regards to our products and or how the way it works. And we can do a quick Q&A session.
Sounds good.
And then you can end with that for sure. I love this slide. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Earl? If not, then he'll continue. Oh, we have a question here. Aren't some viruses new to human population and we don't have defense for it?
So the challenge with that, and great question. And the answer is absolutely. When newborn babies show up, they certainly, moms express some of the antibodies in their breast milk and help protect the baby from whatever is going on. But that newborn baby has never seen any viruses that are here, and that all of us have become accustomed to. And that newborn baby, because its immune system is amazing, learns and figures it all out. And so again, with variants, with changes, with things that happen, the best thing that we can do is focus on making our bodies as healthy as we can and really maximizing our immune system. So the answer is yes, new viruses will come out, new combinations happen. It happens, and we're discovering. The reality is we don't know a lot of different viruses and illnesses that afflict us. We're discovering still new things every day that we didn't know about. And yet our immune system has already come up with a defense. So the answer is yes. And the other answer is also yes, take care of your immune system and it will figure it out, just like it has. We're all here because we were newborns and we figured out how to fight off all the infections and things that happened.
I have a question.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Earl. I think there's one more question here in the chat. How does our products help with diabetics or diabetes?
Yeah, so two big things there. So there's always a big focus on inflammation. So one of the core issues with diabetes, and we can talk about the cortisol insulin loop and all the other things that happen, but the reality is a big portion of what then causes the damage to our tissues is inflammation. Well, again, we have the three most powerful anti-inflammatories, and I don't say that lightly. We have the trifecta that has been shown to be more efficacious at decreasing inflammation than any products I know about. And it is amazing. And so you get rid of what really is driving some of the inflammation. So that's one issue. The second issue is that butyric acid and a lot of the short chain fatty acids will reset your immune system. There is some recent research that says links type 2 diabetes to a autoimmune disease, this is new research out that very few people have heard or seen. And so it helps reset the immune system if that's the case. And then the other thing that these short chain fatty acids do is they help make our membranes. So it's the membrane, it's the sugar interaction with the membrane that actually is the problem with the type 2 diabetic. And butyric acid actually helps change that membrane interaction and makes it more healthy. Butyric acid actually has been shown to be very effective at decreasing sugars and helping diabetics.
Thank you so much, Dr. Earl. Couple more questions before we have you ended with your slide there. How do our products work with bladder issues?
Well, so one thing that pops out is the bladder is lined with endothelial cells. So it's going to help from that standpoint. Most of the butyric acid is, you don't get a lot of butyric acid expressed in the urine. You will get, depending upon the quantity that you take, some of the tetrahydrocurcumin, and the genomics. Again, most of that is taken up into the trillions of cells that we have within our body to help with decrease the inflammation from that standpoint. What it will do is decrease overall inflammation and irritation. And we also know that butyric acid is how do I want to say this so we don't get ourselves in political hot water? So malignant cells, these are cells that go on and produce other crazy cells that look like them and take over our body. I can't say the C word, but I'm thinking about the C word. You guys know what the C word is that I can't say, but it's absolutely helpful in decreasing and eliminating malignant cells. And butyric acid does that. A lot of good research on that.
Stu, I have a couple questions. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. 2 questions. If a person had mercury poisoning, what would you start them on?
So mercury is its own entity, and again, you're saying, okay, which one will detox them better? The reality is mercury is its own entity. Some of the other toxins and heavy metals will respond better to the trifecta. The challenge with mercury, and the reason why it consistently ranks in the top 10 most toxic substances on the planet, is because it forms a very tight bond with either nerve cells, the membranes, mitochondria, or whatever it comes in contact with. Sometimes it's DNA. And so when it forms that tight bond, you need very specific medications and a process to get it out. I think, again, my suggestion would be get as much inflammation out. If the body has to deal with a ton of inflammation, an excess of inflammation, it can't detox. And so the reality is it's the trifecta that would be the most effective. But mercury is difficult to detoxify. And so to give you a specific, this member of the trifecta would be most effective, there just isn't one. You're really wanting to help the body detox by getting rid of inflammation in that standpoint.
Thank you very much. That helps a lot. All of his levels went down except for the mercury. So other toxins. Thank you. And the other one was a chronic fatigue syndrome. I'd put my daughter on it, and it was just, I put her on the trifecta right away, and it was just a little too much for her. So we went off, and now she's on the links. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So yeah, and was there a question with that?
Oh yeah, what would you suggest?
Similar to what we talked about before, like you said, it was too much for her, and sometimes if we have a big toxic overload, it hits the body hard. And so doing exactly what you've done, which is start out with something low and slow, and then bring her into the full trifecta, would be the most effective. Obviously, as a physician, I'm thinking in the back of my brain, okay, what's the source and what's the core? Is it infection? Is it this, is it heavy metals? What's the core source? But from your standpoint, the reality is just like you've done, take a step back, start her off on something that she can tolerate, and then move the others forward.
Thank you. Yeah, she has centralized nerve disorder on top of that. So
yeah, and so link, and then wow, trying to decide between the trifecta. I'm sorry, it's just because I'm thinking in my mind, okay, link really helps with nerves. Wait, so does tetrahydrocurcumin. It affects it. I mean, it just, and oh my gosh, genomics, 3,000 genes. Yeah, that's why the trifecta is so powerful, is because it just influences everything in your body.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep,
That helped a lot.
Great questions, Diane. Really appreciate those questions. And I know we answered a lot of questions. We're already 40 minutes in to our call tonight. And so to respect everyone's time, I know next week, along with Angie, it being our 5th Tuesday, we're going to go over some of the products again. And so we'll be able to catch and answer some of your other questions that you may have. And so with that, in closing, I would like to give the final words or give the time over to Dr. Earl to wrap us up. And I really want to appreciate or let him know how much I appreciate his willingness to answer a lot of your questions, especially from a doctor's standpoint. So the time is yours, Dr. Earl.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, first, let me say that traveling with Stu was an absolute joy, by the way. Absolutely amazing. We had so much fun together. It was David Brown that we needed to somehow figure out how to keep up, come on, let's go. I'm kidding. It was a lot of fun. I'll probably talk about the trust components during my next piece. This is really important as far as moving people who are interested or not interested in ACTIVZ forward. And it will take a little bit of time to develop and really get into it and discuss it to that degree that it should have. So I look forward to talking to you about that in the future. In the meantime, boy, I just want to emphasize the fact that the reality is, be bold, be brave, be amazing, get out there, talk with people. This is the most amazing anti-inflammatory product that is out there. It works with the body naturally. It keeps it in balance. It activates appropriate systems within the cells, tissues, organs, etc. It's just amazing what it does. We all have these times where we have these mental lapses where we forget to take it. And I know I mentioned this on my previous one, but it just bears repeating the fact that when I miss my doses, I really, really, really notice. And I just remind myself, wow, my inflammation is down significantly. I walk around with no pain. I don't ache. I don't have limitations. And it is a huge component dealing with the trifecta. So be bold, get out there, tell people it's amazing, be amazing, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Earl. That was great closing remarks. Love it. Be bold, be amazing. You're amazing, Dr. Earl, and so is everyone on this call here at ACTIVZ. So I will turn the time over to Angie.